1973, my family was expecting their fifth child. My parents had two boys and two girls, but they were still excited for their fifth child to come. It was a warm spring day, and Mom knew she was going to have this baby today. Yet, Mom being who Mom is, she cleaned the house off. She went to the hair salon to get her hair done. This was her fifth child. She knew she had time to get all that done before going to the hospital. It was around 4 o'clock, and she called my dad to take her into the hospital. At the hospital, Mom was admitted, and Dad stayed on a spot in the waiting room. He had not been allowed in the delivery room for the births of his other children, and he did intend to change that tradition for this one. Mom and Dad exchanged a kiss, and then he took a seat in front of the television while she was rolled into the delivery room, just as she had been 4 times before. The doctors, too, expected an easy birth, yet it wasn't long before extra attention was required. The umbilical cord was prolapsed. This means that the cord had entered the birth canal ahead of me, cutting off my supply of oxygen. In a race against the clock, the medical team tried to reposition the umbilical cord and get me out. I was born 45 minutes later, and I was given CPR for another 40 minutes. The lack of oxygen to my brain caused an injury to the motor portion of it. I have a disability called cerebral palsy. I am classified as an amphigoid, which means my muscles never stop moving. The road of my life was not going to be a smooth road. Do you know how frustrating it is not to be able to express yourself? Do you know how frustrating it is not to be able to tell your mother or father what was wrong with you? I know how frustrating that is because for the first 6 years of my life, my family and I played a guessing game. Communication rate became an important aspect of my life at a very young age. It was frustrating for me trying to play charades with my family. Every time I wanted or needed something, the guessing game began. At times, I became so frustrated that I would curl up in a ball and cry. Nobody could understand me, even after I tried to point and gesture to the object that I wanted or needed. For myself, it was very frustrating, yet it was even more frustrating for my communication partner. They didn't know what I needed or wanted, so they were equally as frustrated. This is where my speech-language pathologist gave us a picture board to solve the problem of communication. It had pictures of the bamboo, a mom, a dad, a way to say I love you, I want a drink, and those types of things. It did solve a little of the frustration, but I was a child that wanted to say more than that. I had other things that I wanted to say, and I couldn't do it with the picture board. I remember one time going to school. It was snowy, and my mom put boots on me and put my gym shoes in a different bag. The teacher took off my boots and asked me where my shoes were at. I nodded my head to the back of my wheelchair. She couldn't understand it, so she brought out my picture board. There was no picture for the bag in the back of my wheelchair, so I kept trying to gesture. She started getting mad with me because I wouldn't use the board. I started to cry and was put in the corner until I could settle down. After that, we developed a word book. I would have to page through the book to find the word I wanted. It did help me communicate, but when a word lost in the book, I had to spell it out. This was a very slow process of communication. communication with a picture board and gestures wasn't enough for me, but how would they ever know that? I couldn't exactly tell them what was happening in my mind, so I tried to communicate with what I had and what I knew. It was at 6 years old that I received my first augmentative communication device. It was a word-based system that had 4 levels of words on it. Also, on the 4th level of it, it had 3 rows of phonetic letters. You could sound out any word that you wanted to say. The system here allowed me to say anything that I wanted to say. This device had the reputation of not being a good device to start children on. Most believed it was too difficult for children to learn. I was sent home with that device on a Friday, and by Friday night, I was already talking in complete sentences with it. Now, here is my question to you. Do you think if she sent me home with a bunch of pre-programmed stored phrases, I would have wanted to use it?
What do you think?
A bunch of stored phrases?
Yes.
I would have used them.
Why?
Easier to communicate?
Is it? Is it? Is it?
I think so.
When you talk, do you think in sentences? When you talk, do you think in sentences?
Yeah.
Well, you are the only person that does that. Well, you are the only person then that does that.
Be nice.
I can tell you right now, I wouldn't have wanted to use it. My speech-language pathologist gave me words for the first time in my life, and I could finally tell my older brothers and sisters to leave me alone. I could say what I wanted to say for the first time in my life, and that is why I used it quickly. This changed the course of my life. All of a sudden, the special education teacher realized I was ahead of the rest of the students and knew she needed to do something about it. She suggested that I needed to be mainstreamed, and I was starting with show and tell that were in first grade. In second grade, my IEP committee decided to mainstream me for math. I surpassed all of their expectations, so by third grade my parents and teacher fought to have me mainstream full-time. The committee agreed to it, but the school decided that it would pay for the bus ride instead of trying to make the accommodations for me at my own school. At that time, they were able to decide to do that, so I rode a bus 30 minutes every day to and from school. I went to school with children not in my neighborhood, which is a big thing because I wasn't able to do many social things with my classmates. We will talk about social impact in a minute, but I want to emphasize that we needed everybody to fight the system. My teacher, my parents, and even the principal of the school I was in and the school I was going to. I always hated my IEP meetings because I always had to sit there and listen to what other people thought of me. Nobody knew the abilities I had, but they were determining the goals I should have. Everybody had to fight on my behalf. I want to encourage you to be an advocate for your students. You are going to have to be that for them. We are going to switch gears a little here and talk about communication.
Can I
As
just
teachers,
add something of what you have said here? Chris is using the word mainstream, and mainstream is the word that we used to use in the past. And that's what was prevalent then, including students with disabilities in a regular ed classroom. All of you know now LRE, which is written in the law. Mainstreaming was never written in the law. Least restrictive environment. That would mean having students with disabilities in the educational setting that is best for them.
right,
So Chris was segregated initially. Then he was mainstreamed into an LRE where he could learn best, and that was in the gen ed setting. And we know most students with disabilities now are in the gen ed setting. And this mainstreaming was from the public law 94-142 that said all students with disabilities. We can't say, oh, Chris, you can't go to school. You can't learn. You're too disabled. We can't do that. But that's what happened before we had 94-142 and IDEA. I hate to say that, but that's what happened. Yeah. Okay? Thank you. I just wanted to give them some terms they'll be needing to know.
communication devices have been known to use pre-programmed sentences and words that are nouns for. People believe people that use AAC need to order food, tell somebody what they need, and those types of things. I don't believe they are looking at the bigger picture. The communication device has the opportunity to give a person a chance to have a life. In order for that communication device to do that, it has to give the person the chance to say anything he wants to say. I want to talk briefly about core vocabulary here. How many of you here have heard discussions about core vocabulary?
About core vocabulary?
How many? 8. Words. Do you think we use 80%, 80% of the time? How many words do you think we use 80% of the time?
Just throw out any numbers.
Yeah.
Really this
You're on to it very how many do you think? You're onto it. How many do you think?
Uh-oh.
20.
400.
Thanks for taking risks, you guys. That's good. Don't beat them up. 400.
Core vocabulary is the 400 words that we use 80% of the time. Core vocabulary is based on frequency. The fact that a small number of words makes up most of the vocabulary can be important in designing AAC systems. It is hard to believe that core vocabulary is so consistent. The fact that a small number of words makes up most of the vocabulary can be important in designing AAC systems. It is hard to believe that core vocabulary is so consistent. Yet, we have studies that have shown that it is consistent between population, places, and activities. We don't see enough of these core words on communication boards and devices. I want to ask you a question. How much do you say toothbrush in a day or in a week?
Not often.
How much do you say stuff in a day or week?
A lot.
I think it is pretty obvious that we say stuff a lot more than toothbrush, and yet toothbrush is probably on more communication devices. We think someone has to say toothbrush because it is important to tell someone you use a toothbrush to brush my teeth. Let's play a game. Let's say we are going to teach a unit on George Washington, and we want our student to participate with his or her communication device. What words do we need on our communication devices?
Revolutionary War. America. Not all America, America.
Keep going. Keep going.
Britain. Freedom.
Conjunctions. The, and, is, of.
You're the only person that is right. You're the only person that is right. And I'm not trying to beat you up.
It just feels
But-
that way.
If you give me all those two nouns, what else can I say? And I'm not trying to beat you up, but if you give me all those nouns, what else can I say? So, we're wanting
Very few people that gets that right.
teacher,
Usually nobody gets that right.
teachers to ask description, descriptive questions instead of having somebody name a name, because when that happens, language can be we're wanting teachers to ask descriptive questions instead of having somebody name a name, because when that happens, language can be taught. I'll stop there and you can ask questions. I'll stop there and you can ask questions. Anything goes. Anything goes.
So give them some wait time. They'll come up with some good ones.
What does AAC systems, what does that mean?
Isn't it augmentative and alternative?
AAC
Augmentative and
Augmentative alternative communication.
AUGM, augmentative. ALT, alternative communication. AAC is augmentative alternative communication.
Yeah.
How did you and your wife meet?
On the internet, because my friend made me get on it, and she had the same thing happen to her, which is the funniest part on the internet, because my friend made me get on it and she had the same thing happen to her, which is the funniest part. I guess I should explain when speak to. I guess I should explain when speak to.
And just pass it around.
What I am doing work is icon sequencing.
This that we're passing around is the overlay that goes to his device.
So
He just doesn't use it. So that's supposed to be on there, but he doesn't use it, so.
spelling a lot. It's like playing the piano, and I'm not thinking about where anything is. I'm just letting words pop into my head, just like when you talk What I am doing is icon sequencing, so I'm not spelling a lot. It's like playing the piano and I'm not thinking about where anything is. I'm just letting words pop into my head just like when you talk.
That's such a good
So,
analysis.
sorry. To pick on you, but when you said you're thinking in sentences,
Good, you're coming back to that.
you aren't really words are just popping into your head as you are talking, and that is why it's important to have those words accessible on AAC devices. So sorry to pick on you, but when you said you're thinking in sentences, you aren't really words are just popping into your head as you are talking, and that is why it's important to have those words accessible on AAC devices.
Thanks for clarifying that, because I was with Taylor on that too. Can I tell a little story? Well, first a question for Dawn. Okay, every marriage, as I know, has its great times and its challenges. Can you name a great time and a challenge?
Chris is a challenge.
Explain.
Well, actually, any marriage has challenges with communication, and Chris and I have had our communication challenges, and it has nothing to do with his device.
Okay.
Chris doesn't think like me, and I don't get it. He should read my mind, but he thinks I can read his mind too, so I don't know.
I
So,
understand exactly what you're saying.
yeah, he should think like me, right?
Absolutely, all men should.
They don't.
I could train him to, but doesn't always work. What's the best part?
The best part of being married to Chris. I just love having somebody to come home to, but he does so much for me, even though he may be disabled. He can do a lot for me. And so I think we really complement each other. He's very good with technology, obviously. I suck at technology.
That phone
And
is
yes.
not ringing.
I'm waiting for a
Why?
phone call about a job.
I
So
want. Although that phone is not ringing like I want.
but the support I have from him is amazing. And the last year has been a rough year for us. And he has been so great for that, just in supporting me. So with his disabilities, and I've told people before too, when I dream about him, if I have a dream about him, he doesn't have any disabilities.
Oh, really?
But he does talk with his mouth, but his voice sounds like his device.
The synthesized speech.
So,
Interesting.
but yeah, so when I think that's because I don't think of him as having disabilities. So,
Thanks, you're a great couple.
Which I find funny, even with the beeps which
Yeah.
I find funny.
I'll hear his voice as he's talking in my dream. It'll beep every once in a while. Of course, in your dream, you think that's perfectly normal, but.
Sure. How much are your devices? Because if a student needs a communication device to meet their IEP goals, which a person like Chris would, the school is responsible for getting it.
800.
So you may have to look at some alternative agencies to get the things your students need, but you must advocate for them.
You have to jump through the HOOP hoops. But that price is getting you a support team like a person like myself to help you learn it. 7,800 and you have to jump through the hoops, but that price is getting you a support team like a person like myself to help you learn it.
So you can see whatever the goal is, if there are technologies to support the goals for the student that are written in the IEP. I'm sure you know what an IEP is. Chris talked about that. Then the school is responsible for getting those technologies. And sometimes you have to, in a professional way, nudge. You have to get advocates to get what you need. But that's what the law says, to meet the goals of the IEP. And you can just check in that IEPT meeting, has technology been considered? There's
I'll
a little block.
be
Do more than just check it.
going
It can happen.
into the 2-1 school soon to be an ADVO advocate for somebody that needs communication and they aren't willing. I'll be going into one school soon to be an advocate for somebody that needs communication and they aren't willing.
But by law, they are supposed to provide it. We just have a couple minutes left. May I go back to your college days?
Yeah.
Is that okay? Because these students will relate to that. Okay. I remember when the men's basketball team played in the Civic Center. Chris would faithfully attend the men's basketball games in the Civic Center. And one time my husband and I were there. And Chris was on the main floor, and here was the opponent's, here was the opponent's basketball net. Chris is here, and the home is here. So when there was a foul and they got a free shot, the student would be, or the athlete would be shooting the free shot, and Chris would be there in his wheelchair, flashing his lights in the eyes of the basketball player. Look what Chris is doing. I know he's a stinker, has a good sense of humor. It's like any other college kid.
It was a short.
I don't know how many times he did it before the home security person had the courage to go up and tell him he couldn't do it. I'm sure he was thinking, oh, this poor guy occupies a wheelchair. I can't say anything to him. You were so naughty.
Going on 4 games. And
The naughtiness has not stopped.
Good.
laughing about it, and it was the K A L A M A
Oh, the case.
Z O O Kalamazoo C O A Coach that said something and I saw him say something, so I quickly stopped and said, "What?" I had no right laughing about it, and it was the Kalamazoo coach that said something, and I saw him say something, so I quickly stopped and said what I had no right.
So you see, people with disabilities have their own personality, are just as fun and naughty as anybody else. So thank you, Chris, and thank you, Dawn, for coming today.